Alright, guys, today we're going to be reacting to the last part of the interview of Putin and Tucker Carlson. Thank you so much for the support. Thank you so much for a lot of questions you guys have been answering. Thanks so much for everything. We're just going to jump in here, and a lot of you guys have already answered some of my questions. We have some differences when it comes down to the ideologies and also the approach of international politics. But I'm here to learn. Let's jump in. Let's see what's going on.
Sure. I think, among other things, because excessive production capacities were created. During the confrontation with the Soviet Union, there were many centers created and specialists on the Soviet Union who could not do anything else. They convinced the political leadership that it is necessary to continue chiseling Russia, to try to break it up, to create on this territory several quasi-state entities, and to subdue them in a divided form, to use their combined potential for the future struggle with China. This is a mistake, including the excessive potential of those who worked for the confrontation with the Soviet Union. It is necessary to get rid of this. There should be new, fresh forces, people who look into the future and understand what is happening in the world. Look at how Indonesia is developing. 600 million people. Where can we get away from that? Nowhere. We just have to assume that Indonesia will enter, it is already in, the club of the world's leading economies, no matter who likes it or dislikes it. Yes, we understand and are aware that in the United States, despite all the economic problems, the situation is still normal, with the economy growing decently. The GDP is growing by 2.5%, if I'm not mistaken. But if we want to ensure the future, then we need to change our approach to what is changing. As I already said, the world would nevertheless change, regardless of how the developments in Ukraine end. The world is changing. In the United States themselves, experts are writing that the United States are nonetheless gradually changing their position in the world. It is your experts who write that. I just read them. The only question is how this would happen, painfully and quickly, or gently and gradually. And this is written by people who are not anti-American. They simply follow global development trends. That's it. And in order to assess them and change policies, we need people who think, look forward, can analyze and recommend certain decisions at the level of political leaders.
I just have to ask, you've said clearly that NATO expansion eastward is a violation of the promise you all were made in 1990. It's a threat to your country. Right before you sent troops into Ukraine, the Vice President of the United States went to the Munich Security Conference and encouraged the President of Ukraine to join NATO.
Ugh.
Do you think that was an effort to...
That picture. Oh my God. Talking about this person right here. Folks, this is not a good person right here. Not a good person. Has no respect at all in the world. Not even respecting her own party.
to provoke you into military action?
Мы просто, я еще раз повторяю, мы многократно предлагали...
I repeat once again, we have repeatedly proposed to seek a solution to the problems that arose in Ukraine after 2014 coup d'etat through peaceful means. But no one listened to us. And moreover, the Ukrainian leaders who were under the complete US control suddenly declared that they would not comply with the Minsk agreements. They disliked everything there and continued military activity in that territory.
Шло освоение этой территории натовскими военными структурами. Под видом различных центров.
And in parallel, that territory was being exploited by NATO military structures under the guise of various personnel training and retraining centers. They essentially began to create bases there. That's all. Ukraine announced that the Russians were a non-titular nationality, while passing the laws that limit the rights of non-titular nationalities in Ukraine. Ukraine, having received all these southeastern territories as a gift from the Russian people, suddenly announced that the Russians were a non-titular nationality in that territory. Is that normal?
вызвало решение прекратить
All this put together led to the decision to end the war that neo-Nazis started in Ukraine in 2014.
Neo-Nazi.
Do you think Zelensky has the freedom to negotiate a settlement to this conflict?
I don't know the details. Of course, it's difficult for me to judge. But I believe he has, in any case, he used to have. His father fought against the fascists, Nazis, during World War II. I once talked to him about this. I said, Volodya, what are you doing? Why are you supporting neo-Nazis in Ukraine today, while your father fought against fascism? He was a front-line soldier. I will not tell you what he answered. This is a separate topic, and I think it's incorrect for me to do so. But as to the freedom of choice, why not? He came to power on the expectations of Ukrainian people that he would lead Ukraine to peace. He talked about this. It was thanks to this that he won the elections overwhelmingly. But then, when he came to power, in my opinion, he realized two things. Firstly, it is better not to clash with neo-Nazis and nationalists, because they are aggressive and very active. You can expect anything from them. And secondly, the US-led West supports them and will always support those who antagonize with Russia. It is beneficial and safe. So he took the relevant position despite promising his people to end the war in Ukraine. He deceived his voters.
That's
But do you think at
interesting.
this point, as of February 2020,
That's very interesting when he mentioned that. I mean, there has to be another reason why the war started. It seemed like it's because Putin thinks that Ukraine is just Russia.
24,
In my
he has
opinion.
the latitude, the freedom to speak with you or your government directly about putting an end to this, which clearly isn't helping his country or the world. Can he do that, do you think?
That's a good question.
Ну, а почему нет? Он же
Why
считается
not?
главой государства.
He considers himself head of
Мы
state.
считаем в
He
России,
won
что
the
всё, что
elections.
произошло после 2014
Although we
года,
believe in Russia that the coup d'etat
первичным
is the
источником
primary
власти
source of
является
power
Москва.
for
И
everything
в
that
этом смысле
happened
даже
after
сегодняшняя власть
2014.
является ущербной.
And in this
Но,
sense, even
считается
today,
президентом,
government is flawed.
в этом качестве его
But
признали
he considers
Соединенные
himself the
Штаты,
president, and
Европа,
he is recognized by the United States,
почему нет?
all of Europe, and
Мы
practically
же
the rest of the
переговоры
world in such a capacity.
Стамбул.
Why not? He
Договорились,
can.
он же знал об этом. Более
We
того,
negotiated with
руководитель
Ukraine in
переговорной
Istanbul.
группы,
We agreed.
Арахамия,
He
по-моему,
was aware of
он,
this.
до сих пор
Moreover,
возглавляет,
the
фракцию,
negotiation group leader, Mr.
правящей
Arahamia
партии,
is his
прав-
last name,
правящей партии.
I believe still heads the faction of the ruling party,
В Раде, он же
the
возглавляет
party of
до
the
сих пор
president in the Rada.
президента в Раде, в
He still heads the
парламенте.
presidential faction in the Rada, the
Он даже
country's
поставил свою
parliament.
подпись
He still
предварительно
sits there.
на этом документе.
He even put his preliminary
Потом
signature
он
on the
же
document
публично
I am
на весь
telling
мир
you
заявил,
about.
«Мы были
But then
готовы
he
подписать».
publicly stated
Но
to the
приехал
whole
господин
world,
Джонсон,
we were ready to
тогда
sign this
премьер-министр
document,
Великобритании,
but Mr.
отговорил
Johnson,
нас об этом.
then the Prime Minister
сказал,
of
что
Great
лучше
Britain,
воевать с Россией.
came and
Они нам всё
dissuaded us
дадут
from
для
doing
того,
this,
чтобы
saying it
вернуть
was better to fight
утраченное,
Russia.
Really? Really? Man, I'm telling you, I don't even know what is true or what is true right now. What isn't? We don't know. We have to see those documents. We have to see them.
They would give everything needed for us to return what was lost.
1 second, folks.
And we agreed with this proposal. Look,
Опубликовано.
his statement has been
сказал это
published. He
публично.
said it publicly.
Могут они к
Can
этому
they
вернуться?
return to this
То
or
есть
not?
это вопрос.
The
Хотят они или
question
нет?
is, do they
А
want
после
it or
этого
not?
еще господин президент
Further on, President of Ukraine issued a decree
декрет,
prohibiting
запрещающий
negotiations with us.
Ну пусть он отменит
Let
этот
him
декрет.
cancel that
Мы же не
decree,
отказывались никогда.
and that's it.
Вот нам всё
We have
равно.
never refused negotiations.
I mean, you have those documents, just show them. Let's see it. Let's see it.
О, Россия готова.
Indeed.
Да мы не отказывались.
We hear all the
Они
time,
же
is Russia
публично
ready?
отказали.
Yes, we have not refused. It
Пускай
was
это
them
меняется
who
в
publicly
ответ и
refused.
наступает
Well, let him cancel his decree and enter into negotiations. We have never refused. And the fact that they obeyed the demand or persuasion of Mr. Johnson, the former Prime Minister of Great Britain, seems ridiculous and very sad to me. Because, as Mr. Arakamiya put it, we could have stopped those hostilities with war a year and a half ago already. But the British persuaded us and we refused this. Where is Mr. Johnson now? And the war continues.
That's a good question. Where do you think he is, and why did he do that?
Hell knows. I don't understand it myself. There was a general starting point. For some reason, everyone had the illusion that Russia could be defeated on the battlefield. Because of arrogance, because of a pure heart, but not because of a great mind.
You've described the connection between Russia and Ukraine. You've described Russia itself a couple of times as orthodox. That's central to your understanding of Russia.
Yeah, but that's the thing. He sees it as the same. Ukraine is just the same.
You said you're Orthodox. What does that mean for you? You're a Christian leader by your own description. So what effect does that have on you?
You know, as I already mentioned, in 988, Prince Vladimir himself was baptized following the example of his grandmother, Princess Olga. And then he baptized his squad. And then, gradually, over the course of several years, he baptized all the Rus. It was a lengthy process, from pagans to Christians. It took many years. But in the end, this orthodoxy, Eastern Christianity, deeply rooted itself in the consciousness of the Russian people. When Russia expanded and absorbed other nations who profess Islam, Buddhism, and Judaism, Russia has always been very loyal to those people who profess other religions. This is her strength. This is absolutely clear. And the fact is that the main postulates, main values are very similar, not to say the same, in all world religions I've just mentioned, and which are the traditional religions of the Russian Federation, Russia. By the way, Russian authorities were always very careful about the culture and religion of those people who came into the Russian Empire. This, in my opinion, forms the basis of both security and stability of the Russian statehood. All the peoples inhabiting Russia basically consider it their motherhood. If, say, people move over to you or to Europe from Latin America, an even clearer and more understandable example, people come, but yet they have come to you or to European countries from their historical homeland. And people who profess different religions in Russia consider Russia their motherland. They have no other motherland. We are together. This is one big family. And our traditional values are very similar. I've just mentioned one big family, but everyone has his, her own family. And this is the basis of our society. And if we say that the motherland and the family are specifically connected with each other, it is indeed the case, since it is impossible to ensure a normal future for our children and our families unless we ensure a normal, sustainable future for the entire country, for the motherland. That is why patriotic sentiment is so strong in Russia.
But can I say that the one way in which the religions are different is that Christianity is specifically a nonviolent religion. Jesus says, turn the other cheek, don't kill. How can a leader...
Oh, come on, Tucker, man. Come on now, man. I understand where you're coming from, but I don't think that's the right question, right? I don't think that's the right question. I don't kill, right? But I don't think that's the right question for this, right? I don't think so. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section.
who has to kill, of any country. How can a leader be a Christian? How do you reconcile that to yourself?
Очень легко. Если речь идет о защите себя и своей
It is very easy when it comes to protecting oneself and one's family,
С чего
one's homeland.
начались события?
We won't attack anyone.
С госпереворота. И с начала боевых действий на Донецке.
When did the developments in Ukraine start?
На Донбассе. Вот с чего. И мы
Since the coup
защищаем
d'etat and the hostilities in Donbass began, that's when they started. And we're protecting our people, ourselves, our homeland, and our future.
Она не во внешних проявлениях, и в том, чтобы ходить
As for religion in general,
или бить головой в пол. Она в сердце.
you know, it's not about external manifestations. It's not about going to church every day or banging your head on the floor.
Человекоориентированная. И Достоевский
It is in the
очень
heart.
известен на
And our culture is so human-oriented.
гений.
Dostoevsky, who was very well known in the West and the genius of Russian culture, Russian literature, spoke a lot about this, about the Russian soul.
Русский человек, российский человек, он думает больше о вечном, он думает больше о ценностях.
After all, Western society is more pragmatic. Russian people think more about the eternal, about moral values. I don't know, maybe you won't agree with me, but Western culture is more pragmatic after all.
Возможность вот сегодняшнему
Pragmatic. What does that mean? Pragmatic. It's more pragmatic. Huh. What do you guys think when he say pragmatic? Let me know in the comment section.
этому золотому миллиарду.
I'm not saying this is bad. It makes it possible for today's golden billion to achieve good success in production, even in science and so on.
Что мы вроде как выглядим одинаково, но сознание
There's nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying that we kind of look the same, but our
Well,
minds
so
are
do you
built a
see
little
the
different.
supernatural at work as you look out across what's happening in the world now? Do you see God at work? Do you ever think to yourself, these are forces that are not human?
Да нет, я, честно говоря, так не думаю. Я думаю о том, что
No, to be honest, I don't
мировое
think
сообщество
so.
развивается вот по своим внутренним
My opinion is that the development of the world community is in accordance with the inherent laws, and those laws are what they are.
Так было всегда в истории человечества.
It's always been this way in the history of mankind. Some nations and countries rose, became stronger and more numerous, and then left the international stage, losing the status they had accustomed to.
Наверное, не нужно приводить эти примеры, но начиная
There's probably no need for me to give examples, but we could start with the Genghis Khan and horde conquerors, the Golden Horde, and then end with the Roman Empire.
человечество каждый
It seems that there has never been anything like the Roman Empire in the history of mankind.
потенциал варваров постепенно накапливался.
Nevertheless, the potential of the barbarians gradually grew, as did their population. In general, the barbarians were getting stronger and begun to develop economically, as we would say today.
Экономически они стали укрепляться.
This eventually led to the collapse of the Roman Empire and the regime imposed by the Romans.
500 лет. Этот процесс.
However, it took 5 centuries for the Roman Empire to fall apart.
В сегодняшней ситуации
The
разница
difference with what is happening now
процессы изменений
is that all the processes of change are happening at a much faster pace than in Roman times.
So when does the AI empire start, do you think?
у меня все более
You're
сложные.
asking increasingly more complicated questions. To answer them, you need to be an expert in big
Для того,
numbers,
чтобы
big
ответить,
data,
надо быть,
and
конечно,
AI.
специалистом в
Mankind is
сфере
currently
чисел.
facing many threats.
В сфере вот
Due to
этой
the genetic researches, it is now possible to create a superhuman, a specialized
Well, are you guys taking advantage of that? Is Russia taking advantage of that? That's the question that I might ask, though. I mean, I know the AI is just becoming a huge thing, but a lot of these countries are taking advantage. Nobody's, I guess nobody is a saint on this, right? So I'm wondering what kind of technology Russia is just building on this. Let me know what you guys think.
human being, a genetically engineered athlete, scientist, military man. There are reports that Elon Musk has already had a chip implanted in the human brain in the USA.
Илон Маск внедрил уже чип в мозг какого-то человека.
What do you think of that?
Ну, Маска, я думаю, что Маска остановить
Well,
невозможно.
I think there's no stopping Elon Musk. He will do as he sees fit.
Надо искать
Nevertheless,
способы.
you need to find some common ground with him, search for ways to persuade him. I think he's a smart person, I truly believe he is. So you need to reach an agreement with him because this process needs to be formalized and subjected to certain rules.
Того, что будет происходить с ним в связи с развитием вот этих новейших исследований и технологий в генетике.
Humanity has to consider what is going to happen due to the newest development in genetics or in AI. One can make an approximate prediction of what will happen.
Угрозу своему существованию от ядерного оружия, все начали обладатели ядерного
Once
оружия начали
mankind
между собой
felt an
договариваться.
existential threat coming from nuclear weapons, all nuclear nations began to come to terms with one another since they realized the negligent use of nuclear weaponry could drive humanity to extinction.
Искусственного интеллекта, либо генетики, либо еще каких-то современных направлений, остановить которые невозможно.
It is impossible to stop research in genetics or AI today, just as it was impossible to stop the use of gunpowder back in the day.
Эти исследования все равно будут. Но когда человечество почувствует угрозу для себя,
But as soon as we realize that the threat comes from unbridled and uncontrolled development of AI, or genetics, or any other field, the time will come to reach an international agreement on how to regulate these things.
I appreciate all the time you've given us. I just got to ask you one last question, and that's about someone who's very famous in the United States, probably not here, Evan Gershkovich, who's the Wall Street Journal reporter. He's 32, and he's been in prison for almost a year. This is a huge story in the United States, and I just want to ask you directly.
Wow, Tucker's gonna do this. Okay. Let's see what he does. Let's see. He has balls of steel, man, to do this.
Without getting into the details of it or your version of what happened, if as a sign of your decency, you would be willing to release him to us and we'll bring him back to the United States.
No way, bro. He ain't gonna do that.
мы столько сделали жестов доброй воли, что, мне кажется, мы исчерпали все линии.
We have done so many gestures of goodwill out of decency that I think we have run out of them.
Ни разу не ответил. Но
We have never seen anyone reciprocate to us in a similar manner.
что мы
However, in theory, we can say that we do not rule out that we can do that
не исключаем того, что мы можем это
if our
сделать
partners
при
take reciprocal steps.
встречном движении со стороны наших
When I talk about the partners, I first of all refer to special services.
представителей специальных служб.
Special services are in contact with one another. They are talking about the matter in question.
На то, чтобы не решить это.
There is no taboo to settle this
Мы
issue.
готовы ее решать.
We are willing to solve
Там
it.
есть определенные условия, которые
But there are certain terms being discussed via special services channels.
партнерским
No way.
каналам между спецслужбами.
It's not releasing him. He's not releasing him because he has leverage. That's how he gets leverage. He's a smart politician, man. I'm telling you. He's not that stupid. He's not that stupid, folks.
I believe an agreement can be reached.
So typically, I mean, this stuff has happened for obviously centuries. One country catches another spy within its borders, it trades it for one of its own intel guys in another country. I think what makes, and it's not my business, but what makes this different is the guy's obviously not a spy, he's a kid. And maybe he was breaking your law in some way, but he's not a super spy, and everybody knows that. And he's being held hostage in exchange, which is true. With respect, it's true, and everyone knows it's true. So maybe he's in a different category. Maybe it's not fair to ask for somebody else in exchange for letting him out. Maybe it degrades Russia to do that.
Вы знаете, можно как угодно говорить, что такое шпион, что не шпион.
You know, you can give different interpretations to what constitutes a spy, but there are certain things provided by law. If person gets secret information and does that in conspiratorial manner, then this is qualified as espionage. And that is exactly what he was doing. He was receiving classified, confidential information, and he did it covertly. Maybe he did that out of carelessness or his own initiative. Considering the sheer fact, this is qualified as espionage. The fact has been proven, as he was caught red-handed when he was receiving this information. If it had been some far-fetched excuse, some fabrication, something not proven, it would have been a different story then. But he was caught red-handed when he was secretly getting confidential information. What is it then?
But are you suggesting that he was working for the U.S. government or NATO, or he was just a reporter who was given?
Well, he doesn't know. That's the point, Craig Tucker. He doesn't know. That's why he's telling you that. He doesn't know. You know that, Tucker. You know him, Tucker. He's probably a nice guy. But this is Russia, They just do things differently over there.
Material he wasn't supposed to have. Those seem like very different things.
Я не знаю, на кого он работал. Но повторяю еще раз.
I don't know who he was working for. But I would like to reiterate that getting classified information in secret is called espionage, and he was working for the U.S. Special Services, some other agencies. I don't think he was working for Monaco, as Monaco is hardly interested in getting that information. It is up to special services to come to an agreement. Some groundwork has been laid. There are people who, in our view, are not connected with special services. Let me tell you a story about a person serving a sentence in an allied country of the US. That person, due to patriotic sentiments, eliminated a bandit in one of the European capitals. During the events in the Caucasus, do you know what he was doing? I don't want to say that, but I will do it anyway. He was laying our soldiers, taken prisoner, on the road and then drove his car over their heads.
Damn.
What kind of person is that? Can he even be called human? But there was a patriot who eliminated him in one of the European capitals. Whether he did it of his own volition or not, that is a different question.
Yeah, but Evan Gershkovich didn't do that. I mean, that's a completely different. I mean, this is a 32-year-old newspaper reporter.
He committed.
Yeah, I understand, Tucker, but at the same time, it's just sometimes Americans are kind of naive when it comes down to things like this. They think that, especially when it comes down to liberalism, they think that just the rest of the countries are just gonna follow. And that's not how it goes. You go to different countries, you have to respect their laws.
Something different. He's not just a journalist. I reiterate, he's a journalist who was secretly giving confidential information. Yes, it is different, but still, I'm talking about other people who are essentially controlled by the US authorities, wherever they are serving a sentence. There is an ongoing dialogue between the special services. This has to be resolved in a calm, responsible, and professional manner. They are keeping in touch, so let them do their work. I do not rule out that the person you refer to, Mr. Gershkovich, may return to his motherland. By the end of the day, it does not make any sense to keep him in prison in Russia. We want the U.S. Special Services to think about how they can contribute to achieving the goals our special services are pursuing. We are ready to talk. Moreover, the talks are underway. And there have been many successful examples of these talks crowned with success.
Okay.
Probably this is going to be crowned with success as well. But we have to come to an agreement.
Wow.
I hope you let him out. Mr. President, thank you.
Мне тоже хотелось,
I also
чтобы
want him to
не
return
только
to his
было, чтобы
homeland
он
at
поехал
last.
в конце концов. Я говорю
I'm
это
absolutely sincere.
Ну,
But
повторяю,
let me say
диалог
once
идет.
again, the
Чем
dialogue
больше мы придаем
continues.
огласки
The more public we render
He doesn't want to let the interview to end. Why is that? Why is that? Tucker Carlson just said thank you already, but he doesn't want to let it go. Huh.
things of this nature, the more difficult it becomes to resolve them.
Всё должно быть.
Everything has to be done in calm manner.
I wonder if that's true
Закрытом
with
режиме.
with the war, though. Also, I mean, I guess I want to ask one more question, which is, and maybe you don't want to say so for strategic reasons, but are you worried that what's happening in Ukraine could lead to something much larger and much more horrible? And how motivated are you just to call the U.S. government and say, let's come to terms?
That's a good question, man. Let's see. Let's see.
Так, послушайте, я же сказал.
I already said that we did not refuse to talk. We are willing to negotiate. It is the Western side, and Ukraine is obviously a satellite state of the US. It is evident. I do not want you to take it as if I'm looking for a strong word or an insult, but we both understand what is happening. The financial support, 72 billion US dollars, was provided. Germany ranks second, then other European countries come. Dozens of billions of US dollars are going
course,
to
yeah.
Ukraine. There's a huge influx of weapons.
Yeah.
In this case, you should tell the current Ukrainian leadership to stop and come to negotiating table, rescind this absurd decree. We did not refuse.
Sure, but you already said it. I didn't think you meant it as an insult because you already said correctly, it's been reported that Ukraine was prevented from negotiating a peace settlement by the former British Prime Minister acting on behalf of the Biden administration. So of course they're a satellite. Big countries control small countries. That's not new. And that's why I asked about dealing directly with the Biden administration, which is making these decisions, not President Zelensky of Ukraine.
Ну, если администрация Зеленского на Украине отказалась от переговоров, я исхожу
Well,
из того, что
if the Zelensky administration in Ukraine refused to negotiate, I assume they did it under the instruction from Washington. If Washington believes it to be the wrong decision, let it abandon it. Let it find a delicate excuse so that no one is insulted. Let it come up with a way out.
Пусть они от него отказываются.
It was not us who made this decision, it was them. So let them go back on it. That is
Теперь мы
it.
должны искать выход из этого неправильного решения.
However, they made the wrong decision, and now we have to look for a way out of the situation to correct their mistakes.
Пусть и исправляют.
They did it, so let them correct it themselves. We support this.
So I just want to make sure I'm not misunderstanding what you're saying. I don't think that I am. I think you're saying you want a negotiated settlement to what's happening in Ukraine.
Правильно. Но
Right.
мы уже добились этого.
And we made it. We prepared a huge document in Istanbul that was initialed by the head of the Ukrainian delegation. He affixed his signature to some of the provisions, not to all of it. He put his signature and then he himself said, "We were ready to."
You know what? It might be true. It might be true. I mean, when it comes down to this, we really don't know the truth, man. That's the problem. We don't know the truth. We don't know it. I mean, he might be saying the truth. He might not be saying the truth. I don't know.
Sign it, and the war would have been over long ago, 18 months ago. However, Prime Minister Johnson came, talked us out of it, and we missed that chance. Well, you missed it, you made a mistake. Let them get back to that, that is all. Why do we have to bother ourselves and correct somebody else's mistakes? I know one can say it is our mistake. It was us who intensified the situation and decided to put an end to the war that started in 2014 in Donbass, as I have already said, by means of weapons. Let me get back to further in history. I already told you this.
мы с вами сейчас обсуждали.
We were just
Тогда
discussing it.
вернемся в 91
Let us go
год,
back
когда
to 1991, when we were promised that NATO would not expand, to 2008, when the doors to NATO opened to the declaration of state sovereignty of Ukraine, declaring Ukraine a neutral state. Let us go back to the fact that NATO and US military bases started to appear on the territory of Ukraine, creating threats to us. Let us go back to coup d'etat in Ukraine in 2014. It is pointless though, isn't it? We may go back and forth endlessly, but they stop negotiations. Is it a mistake? Yes. Correct it. We are ready. What else is needed?
Do you think it's too humiliating at this point for NATO to accept Russian control of what was 2 years ago Ukrainian territory?
Я же сказал.
I said, let them think how to do it with dignity. There are options if there is a will.
Варианты есть. Но если такое желание.
Up until now, there has been the uproar and screaming about inflicting a strategic defeat on Russia on the battlefield.
Добиться стратегического поражения России, поражения на
Now they are apparently coming to realize that it is difficult to achieve, if possible at all. In my opinion, it is impossible by definition.
Personally, I don't think there's gonna be a peaceful agreement, folks. I think this is gonna go until, you know, someone win. That's the only time it's gonna finish.
It is never going to happen.
Мне кажется, сейчас
It seems to me that now those who are in power in the West have come to realize this as well.
это осознание пришло. Подумайте теперь.
If so, if the realization has set in, they have to think what to do
Больше
next.
того,
We are ready for this dialogue.
Would you be willing to say, congratulations, NATO, you won, and just keep the situation where it is now?
That's a good question.
ну, вы знаете, это предмет переговоров.
You know, it is a subject matter for the negotiations. No one is willing to conduct, or, to put it more accurately,
Или, точнее сказать, хотят.
they are willing but do not know how to do it.
Я не только вижу,
I know they
но
want
я
to.
знаю, что
It is not just I see it, but I know they do want it. But they are struggling to understand how to do it. They have driven the situation to the point where we are at. It is not us who have done that. It is our partners, opponents who have done that. Well, now let them think how to reverse the situation. We're not against it. It would be funny if it were not so sad.
Да, было бы смешно, если бы не было так грустно.
This endless mobilization in Ukraine, the hysteria, the domestic problems, sooner or later it will result in agreement.
Истерика
No, the
там,
agreement is, but the
внутренняя,
agreement is at the end of the war. Someone won. That's the end of the agreement,
не проблема.
right?
You know, this probably sounds strange given the current
Am
situation,
I
Все
crazy?
равно мы договоримся. И
but the relations between the two peoples will be
может, даже
rebuilt
странно в
anyway.
сегодняшней ситуации прозвучит.
It will take a lot of time, but they will heal.
Между народами восстановится. Потребуется много времени.
I'll give you very unusual examples.
Совсем приведу вам необычный пример.
There is a combat encounter on the
На поле боя
battlefield.
происходит
Here's a specific example. Ukrainian soldiers got encircled. This is an example from real life.
украинская
Our soldiers were shouting to them, "There is no chance. Surrender yourselves. Come out and you will be alive."
Наши солдаты им кричат.
Suddenly, the Ukrainian soldiers were screaming from there in Russian, perfect Russian, saying,
Вдруг оттуда
"Russians, do not surrender."
на хорошем русском
And all of them perished.
и не сдаются.
They still identify themselves as Russian.
Они до сих пор русскими себя ощущают. В этом смысле то, что
What is
происходит,
happening is, to a certain extent, an element of a civil war.
и все думают,
Everyone in the
что
West thinks that the Russian people have been split by hostilities forever.
растащили
No,
одну
they
часть.
will be reunited.
Нет,
The unity is still there.
воссоединение произойдет. Оно никуда и не делось.
Why are the Ukrainian authorities dismantling the Ukrainian Orthodox Church?
русскую православную
I
церковь.
saw that.
because it brings together not only the territory,
Объединяет не территорию.
it brings together our souls.
И
No
никому
one will be
не
able to
удастся
separate the
его
soul.
разделить.
That's it.
Shall we end here, or is there anything else?
No, I think that's great.
Спасибо.
Thank you, Mr. President.
That's it. I mean, it is what it is, folks. I don't know what to say. It is what it is, man. That conflict with the Ukraine, that thing's gonna end. Whoever wins, they win. Let me know what you guys see in the comment section below, and I'll see you in the next one.